Introduction to the years when I was scammed to northern Myanmar. Do you think northern Myanmar is a paradise full of gold, where you can lie down and earn money? No, this is the abyss of human suffering. Electric baton beating, tooth extraction, and finger breakage are just commonplace. Children, do you think this is just a human purgatory? No, this is still an ocean of knowledge. Financial currency and beauty yoga, you need to start learning from scratch. Because here, you are no longer you are a high-quality white-collar woman with a beautiful face and engaged in financial work. And this is just one of your thousands of identities. Behind the role-playing lies a pig-killing plate that deeply understands human weaknesses. Do you think there's only a pig-killing plate here? No, the maturity of the fraud gang system here, the cruelty of the methods, and the cunning of the scams have already exceeded the understanding of ordinary people. Why do you ask me why I know? Because I was deceived into living in northern Myanmar for 9 years, and just crawled out of this abyss. Chapter 1. The former name of North Burma was Jean Sanjiao. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Don't go to northern Myanmar. Before telling this story, I would like to advise every reader who sees this book with great caution not to believe any online claims of high salaries abroad. When encountering similar promotions, do not hesitate and immediately report to the police. No matter what the reason is, don't go to northern Myanmar. As for why, as we all know now, it is the world's largest telecommunications fraud zone. In addition, there is another important reason. As soon as I mention its previous name, everyone should understand that place used to be called the Golden Triangle. My name is Su Ruifeng. Before going abroad, I was a prisoner released through labor reform. Yes, I'm not a good person. I was born in 1986 and am now 37 years old. In my life experiences, I have experienced the sinking of casinos during the Xiangjiang gambling era, as well as the dizziness during the era of the ancient puzzle. In the end, I was arrested and imprisoned in the National Anti-Gang and Anti-Evil campaign, and spent a full 10 years inside. I was imprisoned in 2004, during the era of BB phones. When I was released from prison, in 2014, everyone had a smartphone. During these 10 years, the world has undergone earth-shattering changes. It took me a whole year to slowly adapt to the new era of life, and most importantly, I made a girlfriend. But it was this woman who deceived me to northern Myanmar. I don't think everyone's online pig-killing dish has been easily deceived by others. I met her in real life. When I first met her, it was late at night. She was followed by a few hooligans, and I stepped forward to get to know her. 6 months later, we confirmed our relationship. I am nothing, except for being single and strong. She feels very secure when she is with me, and I am naturally satisfied. The only thing she doesn't think is that she loves playing mahjong too much, but she doesn't play big, so I don't ask for anything. They don't dislike me for being in prison and knowing both cold and hot. As a prisoner through labor, there is nothing unsatisfied about me. During that period, overall, I had a relatively comfortable life. I carried cement on the construction site and worked hard for a month to earn some money. Life was developing in a positive direction, but she evaporated from the human world at this time. I anxiously searched for her for over 2 months, and when it was almost 3 months before I could file a case under the guise of disappearance, she appeared again. WeChat, which never replied, suddenly played a video for me. After connecting, I saw her dressed in a luxurious long dress in a villa, and the sofa she was sitting on was even more luxurious than the one from our city's most powerful Big Brother's house back then. On the coffee table in front of her were bundles of red tickets, and behind her stood a few burly little brothers. As soon as the video was connected, the brothers burst out in a loud voice, "Hello phone." I was confused at the time and couldn't say anything. Crazy. Nan smiled in the video and called out my mixed account when I was in society. The following sentence directly hit my soft spot. I made money. Aren't you always worried, afraid that you won't make money, and I'll follow you through the hardships? Look, I have all the money around me now, all the money. Yeah, I'm a prisoner of labor reform. I finally got a girlfriend, but I'm afraid she won't be able to live a good life with me. I was still in a confused state at the time. Why did you suddenly disappear? Where have you been these days? Do you know how hard it has been for me to find you? I forgot all these words and said directly, where did you get so much money? And who are those people behind you? Me, I was in a hurry to go abroad with an older sister, and I didn't say hello to you. Look, I'm making money now, aren't I? She still held fan air and said to the little brothers behind her, I want to talk to my husband for a while. You guys go out first. Yes. Sister Nan. Those strong men in black almost stood at attention, and then rushed out in unison. I never saw a single figure in the video again. Husband, I'm a bit scared. Nan lowered her voice and said, my older sister is running a casino here, and I've also made a lot of money with her. But the people here make cash, and there's no bank to go back and make money. I don't know how to get the money back. Also, as you can see, I have these big men around me every day. If any one of them has ulterior motives, I don't know what to do. When a woman says these words to her boyfriend in a foreign land, anyone who calls her an old man must show off. I didn't know that this set of words was specifically coined by the 6 of them after 2 hours of research, with the purpose of deceiving me. Can you come over? Even if you come over and help me take the money back, it's okay. She was still daydreaming on the phone and said, when you go back, you can buy a small row first. Don't buy a big one from Shuyuan www.jiaoshuyuan.com. When you become the shopkeeper, I won't be able to clean it up alone. How true. Every word she said was so true, to the point that when I entered the park and remembered these words, it was like listening to a heavenly book. Where are you? Mungnan, this is a small place in northern Myanmar. Please send me your ID card and I will book a flight for you. You can fly directly to Thailand at our airport. I finally heard something wrong and asked, isn't northern Myanmar? Why fly to Thailand? This place is plagued by war every day. Even if you fly directly to Myanmar, you won't be able to get through. It's better to fly to Thailand. It's just a boat ride from Thailand, it's very convenient. At that time, my mind was in disarray and I hardly analyzed why flying to Myanmar would not be possible, but if I could fly to Thailand instead, Nan didn't give me any time to think and said, then I'll book your plane ticket for tomorrow. If you don't come for a day, I won't be at ease. Don't you have a passport? Just bring it to the airport and you don't need to bring clothes or gifts. You can buy them here. After hanging up the phone, I waited for a long time before calming down. I actually realized something was wrong, but I wanted to switch sides. What I was thinking at the time was, there's no such thing as easy money to make. I've made so much money, I definitely won't be able to bring it back. Just like you made a lot of money in a casino, can the casino make it so easy for you to take the money? I don't think even if I go, I may not bring the money back, but at least, I want to bring the person back. Money is gone, you can earn more, work hard to earn, as long as 2 people work together, you can definitely live a good life. Innocent and foolish as a pig, I never imagined that she was just trying to deceive me into going there. I didn't expect that North Myanmar is not a place where you can come and go whenever you want. Chapter 2. And Chapter 3 2.in.1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the other day, I flew from China to Thailand, and as soon as I got off the plane, someone came to pick me up. I saw 2 guys holding 5 or 6 signs at the airport, with the words, Copper Brother, and, Beautiful Home Network Company, written on them. In the end, I found a sign with the words, Nan Jie, written on it and walked over. Brother Fong, right. As soon as the person saw me arrive, they immediately called out my name. I glanced around and asked, where's Nan? The kid lied and replied with a slip of his tongue, Nanjia doesn't have time to come. In our venue, she can't stay for a whole day. What's that, brother Fong? I'll take you to the white bus at the door and wait for a moment. We'll all set off together. Everyone here. I looked at the man with a question and he explained, Fong, besides you, there are other people on this trip. We are short of people there, and we are recruiting from China, right? Do you mind? What can I say? Not to mention, there is really a bus at the airport entrance, with the air conditioning on and soft seats, making people feel like they are sinking down when sitting on it. Unfortunately, at that time I couldn't understand the hint given by the heavens at all. When I could understand it, it was a moment of life and death. I got into the car not long after, and Nanan's message had already been sent to her phone. She simply asked, has my husband arrived yet? I gave back a selfie, in which there were text from the Thai airport and a portrait on a bus. After sending it over, it was like a sunken sea with no news. After a moment, 4 people got on the bus, with 3 men and 1 woman, a couple of children sitting together, and the other 2 men sitting together. I sat in the back seat myself, and so on. The empty bus slowly departed from the airport and walked all the way down. This is not a trip, and my thoughts have always been on Nan Nan. So when the car started driving, I just took a sip of the drink handed over by the dog-leg-like floral shirt and then fell asleep. Open your eyes again, it's already dark. Come on, hand in your passport. You need to check your passport before passing the customs. After passing the customs, let's change cars and we'll be there soon. I, like everyone else, handed over my passport without any warning, without any sense of danger. To be honest, the reason why I didn't realize the danger was that with my experience in mixed society and in prison, those 2 lackeys and the driver working together may not be able to do me any good. From the beginning, I didn't look down on them very much. Just, I can't see where I am anymore. Outside the car window, subtropical plants were scattered all over the mountains, and under the wheels, the muddy path kept bumping. It was not an exaggeration to say that my waist was in pain from being bumped. It wasn't until I saw someone wearing a green military uniform opening the gate that the car slowly drove past, that I felt closer to Nan Nan. Brother, you also went to work in northern Myanmar. One of those 2 men may have been too bored, so he crawled up to me and said this. No, it's not. My answer is very brief, mainly because I don't know who the other person is and don't even know what to say. I'm going to work in northern Myanmar. According to our fellow villagers, I can earn at least 8,000 yuan a month there, and the money is everywhere. Upon hearing this, my heart tightened and I asked, do you really know where you're going? I have a little understanding of northern Myanmar. Before the crackdown on organized crime, a big brother in our city killed someone and wanted to run away. He once said that if something happened, he would run to northern Myanmar. That place is extremely poor, just give the government army some money to live a stable life. How could this person be called the Golden Triangle? It's full of money and poison, and it's not much different. Otherwise, how could it be called the Golden Triangle? Every time I think of this, I always show a self-deprecating smile in the park. At that time, I knew exactly what this place was. Why did I trust that woman so much? I almost put my life in it several times. Change car, change car. With the shouts of those 2 dog legs, we all got off the bus. In the same second as we got off, I had already seen soldiers swaying on the hillside with AK in their arms. However, none of the luxury cars that were supposed to come to pick us up appeared, and there was only a muddy ground in front of us. Where is this? The man who approached me asked this question, and I watched as a Southeast Asian man wearing a green military uniform shot him in the face. Touch. That kid was directly hit and lying on the ground. Immediately after, several soldiers holding AKs around Xiaomian armed me with guns and shouted loudly at the van in front of me. Let you get in the car. The dog-like guy has also changed this time, and said with great enthusiasm, I advise you to be obedient here, otherwise, you don't even know how you died. I didn't speak because I realized something was wrong and obediently got into the car. I don't know how long the car has been driving, but I finally have a building in front of me, and behind me, only the primitive forest is left. This is the first time I know that there is a place in the world called Wa State, and it's also the first time I've seen Myanmar. At that time, Myanmar was no different from the small mountain villages in the wilderness, except for a few already built high-rise buildings. Even those built buildings were government functional departments. The white van passed through the city in Myanmar, and behind it, the military vehicle closely followed, as well as the soldiers standing on the vehicle with AKs in their hands, left no sense of resistance. Get off. The van drove into a park at dawn. What place is this? I'm not going. I won't go. Bang. A gunshot rang out. I turned around in surprise and saw that the young man who approached me after getting on the car got off the car and ran outside the park. As soon as he ran out of the closed gate, the soldier standing in the watchtower above the wall pulled the trigger with a gun. The moment he fell down was right in front of me, blood flowing down the dusty street. This kid probably hasn't lived for 24 hours since going abroad, listened his mother. My name is Ada. The guy who spoke may be from the south, but he has a bit of a southern and northern aura. His muscles are particularly prominent all over his body, except for his lack of abdominal muscles. His muscles have been trained to the point where he doesn't need to squeeze them intentionally and can be easily seen with just one move. It's your director, this is Aunt Fong, who is the supervisor of your stock market, and you are the company's property. I was listening there when I inexplicably heard a few pig calls. When I turned my head to look, I saw several soldiers wearing green military uniforms walking back with iron hooks, hooking their bodies and dragging out bloodstains on the ground. The company brought you from China and spent at least hundreds of thousands on each of you. If your family has money, call them quickly and ask them to pay the compensation. As long as you pay the money, you will be free. If you don't have money at home, you can only go and earn it. When you earn enough money, pay back the debt, and you'll be able to regain your freedom. Don't worry, I'll definitely let you go then. Fair, right? Later on, I found out that this so-called fairness is Ada's catchphrase. In the park, there is not only no fairness, but also no morality and humanity. As for the stock market spin-off, it was a clone created by hackers recruited from China based on the stock market, specifically designed to kill pigs and deceive people for investment. And the job we, as people, have to do is typing on keyboards and tinkering with our phones all day, commonly known as the pig-killing plate. Do you understand? Ada exclaimed, pulling my attention away from the corpse. However, in the afterglow, the corpse was dragged by a person wearing a green military uniform to a pergola. In the pergola, there was a running water pipe constantly washing against the ground. Inside, several soldiers pulled the bodies onto an iron plate, with axes, kitchen knives, and cutting saws all on top. In the blink of an eye, the people were unloaded in the splatter of blood, and then all the unloaded meat was thrown into the pigsty. Ah! I bent down and vomited it on the spot, feeling like my stomach was constantly churning. Since that day, I have never eaten a bite of pork again. Yes, pigs are eating people. Bite by bite, tear off the pieces of meat and chew them non-stop. Speak up. Who can still speak? How are you still talking? I have lived in society and chopped down people, but I have never seen anything like hell. That's why I didn't experience the killer wand on my first day in the park, because I no longer needed it. And nan. I dare not ask anymore. When you see at least one platoon of soldiers swaying throughout the entire park, and everyone has a gun in their hand, even if you have won the world championship in free combat, you guarantee not to talk too much. Big brother, are you still starving them today? Dogleg looked back at Ada and asked. Ada responded with bare arms and a green multi-pocket camouflage pants on his lower body, why not be hungry? Is it fair to others not to be hungry? Take them all to the house. I'll starve all night tonight, and tomorrow I'll see how these new piglets are doing before deciding whether to serve them or not. Piggy. This is the first time I have heard this term. I remember watching a movie called Huang Fei Hong before, where my colleague who was abducted and sold by foreigners was called piglet by them. Unexpectedly, one day someone used this term to refer to me. We were sent to the park building with guns, but no one looked ahead along the way. I, along with the other 2 men and women, turned around to look at the pigsty, their heads filled with the sound of pigs being used as food and tearing at the corpses. That kind of fear, that kind of deterrent power. Later, when I left Myanmar, I heard someone from another park say that Myanmar 729 Park is a military park and the darkest park here. The military barracks are stationed around the park, and these guys are inhumane and even have needles. Some people are psychologically twisted. Finally, as I was about to leave here, I had a strange illusion that not only people were twisted, but the entire building was also twisted. The building I entered is called Building 2, and the room I entered is still vividly remembered in my mind as Building 16 on the 6th floor. Go in. When the door to room 16 was opened, all of us walked in under the threat of gunfire. There were no lights in this room, and everyone was either squatting or sitting on the floor. The only thing that could light up was the moonlight. My first idea at that time was to go to the window to check, until I saw that all the windows were welded by fried dough twist steel, and then I frowned and turned around. Don't look, it's useless and we can't run. The speaker was a man leaning against the wall. He had no clothes on his upper body and his clothes were placed under his buttocks, but his upper body was bruised, and he had just been burned by a cigarette butt. The girl who came with me only dared to speak at this moment and timidly asked, "Big brother, where is this?" The talkative man looked out the window and said, "Here. This is the fraud park. Have you seen these people in front of you at the book park www.zhaozuiyuan.com? All of them were tricked into coming here. The only reason we were locked up is because we didn't have any bills issued today." Another man opened his mouth and retorted, "Don't fart. You don't have a bill, do you? I don't want to cheat people." The man didn't argue back and sneered at him, "You're tough, I'll see how hard you can get." At this moment, the woman who had already turned pale tightly grasped her man's sleeve, her eyes full of panic. His man, however, appeared to have calmed down a bit and continued to ask the landlord, "So why did they bring us here?" The landlord gave him a sidelong glance and said, "Why? I'll make a confession for you, kowtow to you 3 times a day with incense, and call you ancestor. After saying this, everyone in the room laughed. Their laughter sounded awkward, not like they were mocking anyone, especially like they were mocking themselves. I watched as the young couple slowly squatted by the wall, and the man was even afraid that his woman would sit on the ground cold, so he let her sit on her lap. The landlord watched coldly and casually said, "Hey buddy, I advise you to split up with your wife quickly, otherwise it will harm others and oneself." "What does it mean?" The man who had already recovered immediately stared, as if he had been violated by someone. "What does that mean?" "Haha." The landlord sneered, "You'll know what I mean tomorrow." After finishing this sentence, he turned to us and said, "You guys wait until tomorrow to see a good show." Chapter 4. Aren't you willing to have partners? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Early the next morning, we were awakened by shouting. "Come out! Come on, his mother!" A few people carrying batons entered the room, shouting and kicking, and the people around them had no consciousness of resistance at all. They just walked out in line in a daze before waking up, feeling extremely conscious. When the group of people stood in line and stopped at the door, the strong man holding a baton shouted, "I didn't order yesterday. I have points in my heart, and next time, I will go up to the 8th floor. Also, yesterday's new arrival, the old man has to take care of it. Little landlord, you take Su Ruifeng, Morn, take Zhou Bing." When it was finally the woman's turn, the guy gave a mischievous look and said, "The new little girl moves around. Whoever needs you, you sit on the whip of whoever needs you." He either has a big tongue or is deliberately playing pranks, and I can clearly see that it's not only these jerks who are smiling, but also those who were deceived in. I stood at the end of the queue and was sandwiched by these strong men before and after being sent into the elevator. When I came out of the elevator again, a whole floor filled with computers appeared in front of me. "Brother, sit down." The landlord casually found a place to sit down, patted the chair next to him, and then turned on the computer. "I'll send you some information first. It's Penguin." After landing on a penguin, this kid turned around and asked, "Hurry up. You need to register a Penguin account and use this month's time to raise it, and apply for drilling with Sister Fong, which is equivalent to VIP. Drilling. Scammers, can we still charge this thing against the Penguin?" The landlord saw my confusion and said, "I don't understand, do I? Only by charging for it can domestic people trust you more easily. Who would have thought that those who deceive them would specifically charge for it? Not only do we need to drill, but we also need to make space. Also, don't you have a phone on your desktop?" I lowered my head and indeed saw a mobile phone on the desktop, which was a Fruit 5 with a broken screen. After applying for a brand new Penguin account and adding friends, the landlord immediately dragged and dropped information from his full screen files to send me. What are blind date breaking, chat framework, how to talk about one's career and dreams, talk about family stories, talk about interests and hobbies. After the information was sent, the landlord continued, "Now that this group of people in China have learned well, you can't be too careless. I'll send you something more." This time, the landlord really scared me. This kid actually sent me the professional terminology of American ophthalmology. "Have you seen those fools?" The landlord pointed at everyone in front of him and said, "They are still immersed in the stage of pretending to be women and deceiving stinky old men. You must know how much men cheat, right? Brother, it's different. My buddies use their male identity to deceive middle-aged women on various dating websites. The more money they have, the better they pretend to be forced. As long as they have a romantic mindset, the only amount of money they want to deceive is their bank balance." The landlord pointed to the Penguin account I just applied for on the computer screen and continued to guide, "Remember, if you want to chat with a woman as soon as possible, don't use your Chinese identity. You can set the address to the United States, New York, or stay at home. The same goes for green bubbles. Later, I will send you some handsome foreigners' home photos. Starting from today, you will post an English moment every day. Don't post anything that cannot be translated by a translator, and don't post it too simply. Use your photos to keep the green bubbles healthy for a month." I asked in confusion, "Do we still need to raise this thing? Otherwise?" "But you don't have to worry, every newcomer has a month to adapt, and during this month, no one will easily touch you unless you find someone to beat you up. If the order is not issued after a month, there may be trouble. Stop talking about this, let's keep going." The landlord teaches very seriously, and I can only listen sentence by sentence. He asked me to pretend to be a foreigner, saying that those old ladies on dating websites are just like this. Also asked me to pretend to be a foreign ophthalmologist, the reason being that we only have professional information on foreign ophthalmology. When I asked where these professional medical materials came from, the landlord didn't care at all and said, "Why do you care about that? If you find it difficult to focus on science, I still have some professional information on kidney surgery here." Next, it's the entire process of fraud. First, pretend to be a foreign doctor to come to China for medical exchange. You need to make the exchange time a bit longer, and the exchange location is set in Yunnan. However, what you are coming to exchange with, you need to apply to Ada and those people to open a web page. Only by opening the web page can you find the real information. However, in the park, if you want to open a web page, you need someone to be watching from the side. At this point, I understand why so many people believe fraudsters, because the information they use is real, and even many photos are downloaded from the internet and can be used directly with simple modifications. What are you two doing? When I was listening to the landlord talk about his fraudulent experience, the group of people from Ada walked in outside the door. Zhaoshuyuan.com Ada walked up to the little couple who came with me and just gave a big mouth to the man. Pop. The young man with small arms and legs was slapped and flew out, hitting his head against the wall and bouncing back before he could fall down normally. Ada cursed in pain, "I spent so much money to bring you out of China, is it for you to talk about love?" The girl explained to her partner with a crying voice, "We don't have. I just asked him how to get this registration information." Damn it. Ada kicked the girl out with just one kick, and the woman fell to the ground with a click sound, almost losing her breath. Willing to have a partner, right? Are you willing to have a partner? Ada grabbed the girl's hair and dragged her out, then reached out to the boy who had not yet reacted and said, "Get him out." The dog leg grabbed the boy's neck and pushed him out. When several people entered the room next to the hall at the same time, I could clearly see their figures from the window. There was a very ordinary table in that room, on which handcuffs were placed like prison interrogation chairs. After the woman was placed on the table, she was handcuffed with a click, and her entire upper body could lie on the table. And that boy, who was constantly beaten by several men who swung open their sticks, screamed loudly, and I could hear the sound of the wooden stick hitting his body clearly. The room was not soundproof at all. Aren't you willing to have a partner? After placing the woman on the table, Ada extended his strong and powerful arms and grabbed a white T-shirt from her body, tearing it open. "Then you can keep an eye on me." Chapter 5. Hello, husband. You are listening at novelfull.audio. They are not human. There is no human nature at all. After Ada tore apart the girl's T-shirt, his face covered in whiskers pressed against it. I heard the constant laughter coming from the room before turning around, and the landlord sat next to me, swallowing saliva. "Don't touch me. I fucked your mom." The girl was cursing frantically, trying every way to push her legs. As she struggled to avoid these humiliations, the boy who had been knocked down on the ground was constantly arching his back and trying to climb up. Touch. 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 Pop it. I watched as several wooden sticks took turns landing on his back, and even saw the boy finally lying on the ground after one of them was directly broken. Even though he was beaten to this appearance, he still vomited blood and extended his fragile and powerless hand. As a result, the hand was lifted and stepped on by the dog leg. Ada picked up that girl. I turned around and closed my eyes in the next second. But I couldn't close my ears too. The screams and the laughter of those bastards kept entering my ears. Isn't it a willingness to have partners? I let you watch it his mother once. I can't bear to see what Ada did, but his next words made me open my eyes again. "Go, call all the supervisors and team leaders for me." This sentence spread, and the small landlord rubbed his hands and walked to the door with a dirty face. When Dogleg walked out of the house, he spat directly on his face and said, "Bastard, you've been waiting long ago, haven't you?" The landlord responded by saying, "I warned them last night, there's no way, don't listen to me." Damn it. Dogleg didn't show any good face to the landlord, then waved his hand towards the entire hall, and 3 more men stood up at the same time. At this moment, I understood that the hall was divided into 4 groups, each with a leader, and the landlord was the leader of one of the groups. These team leaders have a supervisor above them, and it is estimated that there are other rooms in this building that are similar to this one. Several supervisors are under the same overall supervision, and the supervisor is Ada. After understanding these things, I have been silently remembering the appearance of each of these team leaders in my heart. As for why we need to remember these, because I want to run. This place is really unbearable. They are not reasonable at all, let alone reasonable. This group of people doesn't even talk about human relationships and worldly wisdom. The young couple only said a few words, and being carried away by this group of people is a disaster. The prison hasn't been so miserable, has it? There are still rules in prison. This place is even darker than the underworld, it's like a human purgatory. The screams lasted for a whole hour, and when everyone was done, Ada squatted next to the boy with his untied pants. Dogleg pulled his head up and Ada asked, "Do you still want her?" "I am the most fair person and absolutely respect my personal wishes. It's okay, if you're still willing to have her. Then I'll listen to you. But let's talk about it first. It's not these group leaders who will enter the house next. We need to let all the brothers taste something fresh first, then the green soldiers outside. Finally, if you really can't bear it and still want her, it's okay, it's really okay. We have a nightclub in our park, and there are all kinds of girls inside. When you earn money, you can go to the nightclub every 200 times, and you can do it as many times as you want." Puff. The weak boy didn't know how long he had accumulated strength before spitting out a mouthful of blood on Ada's face. Ada didn't get angry, instead he smiled. But at this moment, I saw everyone around me laughing and retreating. Ada took the wooden stick from a person who retreated next to him and looked at the boy in front of him who couldn't even lift his eyelids. He said, "You're willing to play with your mouth, right? I'll play with you until the end today." He used one end of the wooden stick to directly hit the boy's lips, and his lips burst open on the spot. I watched as a stream of blood rushed out. The teeth are quite sturdy. Adaba handed the stick to the nearby dog leg and raised his chin, saying, "Tomorrow morning when I wake up, I don't want to see him have the same two front teeth as others." Dogleg laughed mischievously and grabbed the boy out of the room, dragging him into a nearby cabin in the hallway. At this moment, the newly completed landlord has returned. Don't be in a daze, hurry up and get to work. Watching movies is counted as part of your working hours. I glanced at the satisfied face of the little landlord and asked, "Where did the man go?" The landlord replied, "Don't worry, we can't die. Here, everyone is the property of the park. However, Brother Yong has different hobbies from normal people." "How good are you, too?" I quickly turned my head and didn't want to know another word. All the time that followed, I watched the entire process of the small landlord's scam. His scam technique is particularly simple. After applying to open a web page with data, he began to search for middle-aged women on various dating websites for chatting. Zhaoshuyuan.com. After not chatting much each time, I simply say one or two sentences and then voluntarily disconnect for reasons such as meeting, seeing a doctor, undergoing surgery, which creates the illusion of being very busy. Next, a photo of a foreign doctor undergoing surgery will be posted in the space or on social media, accompanied by English text such as, "Today is fully booked, I estimate I will be exhausted when I finish work." Not to mention the person who was deceived by him, I was sitting next to the landlord, almost thinking that this kid was just a doctor. Of course, today's small landlord still hasn't made an order, but he doesn't seem nervous at all. The landlord told me that this stage is called pig farming, and you need to first fatten the pigs. Only when the other party completely trusts you, can you make a move. I asked how to prove that I have already fattened up. The landlord smiled mysteriously and said, "Women, don't you know if their thoughts are on you? If one day several messages you sent at different times are instantly replied to, it means she has already taken over." In addition, I also saw another person in the park who had achieved remarkable results. Sister Fong. I have almost a pig here. At this moment, Fong Jia, who had been trimming her nails by the side, walked over. As the person was not far from me, I could see everything clearly. Fong Jia picked up her earphones and made a silent gesture to everyone. Then, she sent the voice over. When it was connected, Fong Jia naturally said, "Hello, husband." I suddenly felt a chill. Because I remember the message that Nan Nan sent me when I just landed at the Thai airport. She also called me that. Chapter 6. He studies harder than anyone else. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ding dong ding dong. I have forgotten how that guy achieved good results, but the sound of the whole building still makes me shiver to this day. By the way, the only thing I remember is the sentence that Aunt Fong said with her earphone. You don't even want to invest this amount of money, why do you say you love me? Her grudges, her unwillingness, and like a girl who has put in all the effort to test her lover, she uttered a very straightforward reminder. Next, after Aunt Fong hung up the voice in great frustration, the entire building sounded a ding-dong-ding prompt sound. After this sound, an electronic voice came. 280,000 yuan has been received. 280,000 yuan. If the person being scammed is a wealthy individual, perhaps this amount of money may not cause too much harm to the other party, but is it so easy for a wealthy individual to be scammed? So what if the victim was an ordinary person? What does this 280,000 yuan mean to him? Oh roar! A man with hair long enough to build a bird's nest on top of his head was cheering and jumping, while the group of guys from Ada who were just like demons, clapped their hands and rushed in from the nearby door. After seeing Ada, the guy immediately became honest and stood timidly in front of him, with an apologetic expression on his face. He said, "Big brother, I was too excited just now. I placed an order, and I have achieved results before." He was scared. Ada showed some kindness this time, reaching out his hands and vigorously patting the man's shoulder, saying, "What are you thinking? In our park, as long as you have achievements and can issue orders, you are the emperor. Don't say you just jumped up from your chair and ran around the house, even if you're going downstairs to have a good time now, I'll open the door for you." After Ada finished speaking, he turned his head to look at everyone and said, "When each of you came, I've said that this place is different from China. There is no class suppression or interpersonal relationships here. As long as you have the real ability to make money for the company, you can do whatever you want. Everyone, stand up now and applaud the mule." Pop, pop, pop. Ada took the lead in slapping, and shortly after, the brave brother standing behind him and the group of people who were still violent a few minutes ago all applauded. Finally, it was the landlord, Aunt Fong, the wooden me, and the others with envious faces. Yes, I don't realize that I'm with them yet, and I definitely won't feel envious of them one day. With thunderous applause, the mule drifted a bit, and his smile appeared on his face. Standing next to Ada, he still trembled and asked, "Big brother, I won't be beaten today, will I?" Ada responded, "If anyone dares to touch you today, I promise to fuck him to death." All of you are optimistic. Ada took out his phone and dialed a voice call, saying, "Boss, I'm Ada. My subordinate opened an order for 280,000 yuan and charged 28,000 yuan into his card. Do." The phone was hung up, and Ada looked at the skinny mule in front of him and said, "What are you still waiting for? You already have 28,000 yuan in your card, go ahead and make some purchases." "Yeah." The mule swung his fist into the sky and rushed downstairs without looking back. Then, his roar came from the entire floor. Ada looked back at the figure of the mule and smiled at his subordinates. Then, he looked at the other people in the room and shouted, "Now, we have a role model. And in our park, there are casinos, nightclubs, and little joys, everything you need. As long as your employee card has money, you can play whatever you want. Do you understand? Work." As soon as Ada finished speaking, the mule rushed back. He held a newly opened huasi under his armpit and took out a box of red cigarettes. He personally stuffed them into Ada and Brother Yong's pockets, even the thugs behind them. After finishing this, only 2 or 3 boxes of cigarettes were left. The mule opened another box and smoked one by one on the tabletop, constantly saying, "Smoking, buddy, you have achieved success. Smoking, buddy has achieved success." When the smoke came to me, what I saw was not a cheerful face, but a face that forced out a smile but kept shedding tears. I couldn't distinguish whether he was crying or laughing, but I took the cigarette wet with a teardrop and lit it directly in my mouth. For smokers, who have been out of food for nearly 30 hours, I am really not in the mood to analyze their emotions under the temptation of nicotine. Even after taking the first puff, I didn't even spit out any smoke. Brothers, I'll go have some fun first, and then come back to tell you which girl is beautiful. The mule went downstairs and invited a baton, but was refused. The landlord looked at me with a focused gaze towards the mule and said, envy. I took a deep puff again. Hua-zi was real, envy was fake. Don't worry, when I win this order, I'll take you to the nightclub. Alternatively, transfer a few thousand yuan into your card. The landlord hugged my shoulder and said, I have a premonition that the one my friend raised this time must be a fat pig. Afterwards, I inquired about allocating money to the card. The landlord said that the park is different from the outside, where a work permit magnetic card can swipe everything. For example, if you need daily necessities, you can go to a small shop to purchase them by swiping your card, but the prices are a bit expensive. A box of the most ordinary instant noodles, 10 yuan, King Farong, 50, Coca-Cola 15, this magnetic card can also be used to swipe at the nearby casino, such as the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com. As long as there is money inside, the same chips can be swiped. The cheapest one among them is the nightclub. 300 rotten goods sold in the park, 300 Southeast Asian girls, 500 Xiao Shiba and Xiao Tian, and 1000 Maozi. There are even more fancy ones, paired with best friends, starting at 2000, pure sisters, 3000, mother, almost done. Upon hearing that mother character, I no longer want to listen further. This is not an entertainment venue, it's Lion Camel Ridge, it's an bottomless pit. Here, even if you achieve good results, you should be afraid of being beaten. Even if you earn money, you cannot go out and spend it. I don't even know whether I will be happy or sad after earning money. So, can those women who receive guests at the nightclub get better? How should the mule, who is on the verge of mental breakdown, vent its anger after leaving? I've seen you pretend to be aloof like this. The landlord sneered at my attitude, as if he could judge the future. In the end, the most abnormal thing is you. He told me a story. Speaking of this mule, at the beginning, he relied on his identity as a former teacher of the people and refused to deceive anyone by saying anything. Immediately after, Ada led his subordinates to beat him 3 times a day, just like eating. Everyone was left with sequelae from the beating. When Ada saw that Ada didn't need to speak, he immediately leaned against the wall, his legs and stomach trembling. How did it go afterwards? Is it different to come and type on the keyboard? Of course, the mule is still different from others. He works harder than others, hoping that one day he can earn enough money to redeem himself. In order to achieve this goal, he believes in all methods that can bring good luck, including the extremely disgusting rumored one in Southeast Asia who has sex with the moon-red girl. Chapter 7. IP address is amazing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Brother, I see you've been absent-minded all day. Are you going to run? Let me tell you, we are all friends and friends. If you have a good way to run out, you must take me with you. As night fell, as I entered room 616, I leaned against the bed and looked up at the moon in the sky. Tonight's meal was corn-flour pancakes and soy sauce soup, which was similar to when I first entered the detention center and the case verdict was still pending. I could still accept it. After finishing my meal, the landlord's words made me turn my head away. There is a saying in prison that goes, I'm not afraid of you being bad, but I'm afraid of you tampering with people. Taming means to deceive, referring to you drawing a path for others, asking them to escape from prison, and then reporting yourself for meritorious service in order to reduce your sentence. These few words from the landlord really make me smell a bit of prison. I learned about it in that place, and the old people in the house often say, it's better to do things over the top than to say anything, just to guard against this. Is this a place where people stay? Don't you want to run? This is what I said, lowering my voice and speaking in the ear of the landlord. In that second, I saw the eyes of the little landlord light up. He looked at me with eyes full of thieves, probably treating me like those newly entered children. No, this small landlord is just a child in his 20s and 50s who is good enough to be someone else's brother. What do you want to do? His voice was even lower, and his words were likely to be a mere sound to others, with no discernible number. I don't know, I haven't figured out the route yet. I have been in prison for a whole 10 years, but can you deceive me because of my involvement in black and evil, and my sentence is not reduced for a day? I don't know why, but after arriving at Myanmar, my alertness increased all over my body, and I even wore a condom in every sentence. Later, the people in the park gave me a very loud nickname from behind, called Boldeen Bai. And here is my beginning. The small landlord said without knowing what he was planning. I really found out here. Don't forget to send a message to my brother. I don't want to stay here for a long time. I can't stay here for a day. His riddled words sounded like farting to me, but as I lay silently on the cold floor again, I muttered, if only I had a bed. The landlord responded in the voice, just endure it. In a few days, I'll take you to a big bedroom. Starting from here, I finally understood the rules of 729 for the first time. Here, the man who doesn't pay the bill has a 1-month study period when he first enters the park, just like the novice protection period in online games. During this period, no one touches you, but there is no good living treatment. After a month, if you place an order and have money in your card, you won't have to eat pancakes and soy sauce soup. There is a cafeteria upstairs, where there are chefs who can fry for you. Just say what you want to eat. As long as the order is large enough, even if you want to eat fresh monkey brain, these people dare to bring you a monkey and let you eat it with a spoon on site. After completing a single order, the novice protection period will be over. A single order can guarantee that you can fish freely within a week. Of course, this refers to those over 10,000 yuan. If it's a small order, such as a tea cellar with 800 children, it can only guarantee the same day. A week later, if you can't make a list again, you will have to enter 616 sleep on the floor tiles. If you can't drive it for a week and a day, the landlord's original words are that someone will invite you to sit on the electric tutu. What is an electric bump? I didn't ask in detail, so it's probably not a good thing. If you not only fail to make an order but also slack off in the next week, then you're sorry. You can try all kinds of torture, the landlord said. There are also dedicated water prisons in the park. Even the brave brother will reward you with a very brutal night of spring snacks. Upon hearing this, I secretly swore in my heart that if that brave guy dares to call me into the room, I will die with him, no matter what love is. At daybreak, I still couldn't sleep, my stomach chattering incessantly as I pulled it out on the floor tiles. When the brave guys opened the door, I rushed straight to the bathroom. Yonggu didn't stop him either, just silently followed to the restroom and stood outside the door, saying, "Can't you handle it? If you can't handle it, hurry up and learn. Whatever you ask for when you get an order, don't do it. When you enter the small dark room, you will know that even going to the restroom is a luxury." When I came out again, I looked at myself in the mirror with a pale face and a weak body, feeling a little heartbroken. When did I experience this, whether it's wandering in the world or going to jail? I really want to turn around and punch that brave guy hard on the chin, then shout out to all the gun barrels rushing towards the toilet, damn it. Let's go. The action of Brother Yong lifting his clothes and scratching his belly stopped me. He had a gun on his waist, which I knew was a replica 54 produced in a small workshop. But as long as he called it a gun, it could instantly kill a person. I don't want to die yet, at least not now. I need to find Nan Nan and slap her face with my big mouth to ask why all of this is happening. I was pushed out of the restroom by Brother Yong, and when I followed the elevator to the room filled with computers again, I sat back next to the landlord and operated the computer according to his instructions. "Brother Yong, I am applying to open a web page." This is what I said, because I really don't want to continue sleep on the floor without saying no here. Have you figured it out? Once you've figured it out, who among us is willing to fight you? Aren't you still unable to figure it out? Yonggu sat over and tinkered with the password box on the keyboard a few times, then he said, "Turn it around." After I turned my body around for about 2 seconds, I heard the keyboard sound. All right. Turning around again, this computer can now open web pages. I opened my computer and started searching for cooperation information between foreign medical institutions and hospitals in Yunnan. After finding them, I took screenshots of all these things and placed them on my desktop. Then, I opened a dating website called Love Paradise. Just as I registered an account and was about to fill in the information, Brother Yong said, "Remember to fill in Yunnan." The landlord added, "Our internet and electricity here are supplied domestically. In order to prevent fraud, China often cuts off the power supply to us. Therefore, when you fill in Yunnan, it is not easy to be displayed as remote login. Remote login requires account suspension. In fact, it's not just Yunnan, the IP addresses of Xiangjiang, Laoao, and Baodao are all fraudulent. However, the parks that can change the IP addresses to those places are usually occupied by hackers. In Southeast Asia, hackers like Nyocha are a scarce resource. Old Sue, this pig I raised has been put on a condom. I am busy and alive here, and the sudden voice of the landlord pulled everyone's attention away. Chapter 8. Being able to make an order is like being an uncle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The landlord immediately said to Brother Yong, "Brother Yong, quickly open a web page for me. I need a translator." When the web page was opened, the small landlord immediately used a translator to input a row of English in the green bubble dialog box, which roughly meant "really unlucky, God, I don't know why my bank card was frozen when used in China. I just want to buy a piece of clothing. Just 1 second." 1 second later, the other party had already replied with an all-Chinese message. Could it be that your bank did not cooperate with UnionPay, causing your bank to be unusable here? The small landlord is an old fogey. He can't tangle on this question. He immediately replied in English with a low mood. "What should we do? Then we need to spend a lot of money here. I have already prepared enough money. Do we have to go back to the United States to unseal the bank card and fly back? That will take more than 10 hours of flight, which will delay my meeting." The person with a lotus avatar on the green bubble and the username, "Rome wasn't built in a day," replied, "Is there anyone in the United States who can help you handle this matter?" "Of course not, even if there is, the bank card is in my hands and I am in China. How could this be handled?" The other party has not moved. This is the 3 minutes when the landlord stared at the screen, afraid to even breathe. Everyone, including Brother Yong and me, stared at the screen without moving. "How much do you need approximately?" "Yeah." The small landlord suddenly stood up and raised his hands in front of everyone's attention, shouting loudly. Brother Yong quickly grabbed his clothes and said, "Don't be so naughty. Let's get the money over first." The landlord was not in a hurry at all. He sat down slowly and confidently said, "Brother Yong, the fish has already bitten the hook and can't run away." He immediately replied on the computer, "What do you mean by that? I didn't intend to use your money, I just wanted to share my frustrations with you. How could I use a woman's money?" Su Ruifeng saw the small landlord typing indignant words on the screen, but his facial expression gradually became joyful. The corners of his mouth slowly curled up, as if he knew everything the other person was going to say next. "Aren't you facing difficulties? I think it's appropriate for people in love to help each other. If it's okay, you can return the money to me after you return to your home country." "How can that be done?" The landlord warned like an honest man, "Dear, you can't trust others so easily on the internet, it's easy to be deceived. Can't even you believe it?" This is the other person's answer. The landlord quickly glanced at Brother Yong, who took out his walkie-talkie and shouted, "Technology, technology, I need support here." After a sentence, the little landlord's penguin account started flashing in the bottom right corner of the screen. When he clicked on the flashing account, another penguin account had already sent a bunch of pictures inside. Of course, you can't believe anyone. But as a lover, I am willing to prove myself for you. Shwa 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 shwa. The landlord sent all the pictures backwards, with a foreigner's passport, as well as his flight ticket to China, bank information, and bank account balance. Inside were a total of 130,000 US dollars, like all the savings of an ophthalmologist, but not so eye-catching. Look, everything I've told you is true. The reason I'm willing to show you these things is that I really fell in love with you. Being with you has a different experience. Even if we can't meet in a short period of time, I will definitely marry you back and become China's son.in.law. Upon reading this passage, I can imagine how the silly women over there are smiling with their eyes full of nostalgia. Perhaps it is this longing for love that makes them lost. Since you love me, why aren't you willing to use my money? I have learned a lot during my time in China. A Chinese doctor told me that in this country, using women's money is a shame. Give me an account. The other party's response made the whole room once again resound with cheers, and Brother Yong felt that this matter was already very certain. At this moment, the landlord was superior in his skills. Fool, didn't I tell you that my bank card has been frozen? What's the use of giving you an account? So, haven't you met many Chinese doctors? Is there anyone you can trust to ask them for an account and withdraw the money for you? The landlord has never taken the initiative to say anything about asking for money, but this woman is like crazy, risking her life to give it. This is the pig-killing plate. They spend a lot of time on the internet taking you to experience completely different feelings of online love. At the moment you feel deeply in love, they stab your heart from behind. Ding dong ding ding. A similar sound echoed in the hall, and at this moment, I even wanted to stand up and curse, foolish. If I had to curse, I was scolded by the landlord on my behalf. He was deceiving people's money, deceiving their emotions, and even cursing them fools after they fell for it. Digging out the other person's sincerity with one's own hands and throwing it into the mud, trampling on it recklessly. Brother Yong's phone rang, and he just listened to it in his ear before immediately getting up and saying, "The landlord has placed an order for a total of 320,000 yuan. I remember it so clearly because the money was supposed to be over 40,000 US dollars at the exchange rate at that time." The landlord quoted this number with whole and zero to make the other party believe that he was really attending a medical seminar, and the price of this seminar was so expensive. What did I tell you? Ah. The landlord shook my shoulder wildly and said, "Did I say I wanted to take you to a king-sized room? I didn't say I wanted to take you to the nightclub. Hi. I didn't say it." The small landlord I saw had red eyes, demon horns were growing on his head, and there was no human touch on his entire body, except for the appearance of a human. "Brother Yong." The landlord excitedly said, "I want to apply to take Mr. Su off work. Today, the two of us need to have a good drink." Brother Yong waved his hand and said, "It's approved." The landlord rushed downstairs like a mule at that time, and when he returned, he held 2 huazi in his hand. This kid was the first to open one and directly took out 2 boxes and stuffed them into my pants pocket. I saw that it was a hard box, but on the outer packaging of huazi, this type of cigarette, which should be sold every 45 boxes in China, is marked here for a price of 1,000. That's it, it's still the best value for money. Immediately, like a mule, he began to fill the room with smoke, stuffed 2 more boxes for Brother Yong, and said, "Brother Yong, can we open the cafeteria upstairs at this point?" At this moment, Brother Yong's face was no longer twisted and ferocious, more like a parent who is used to children. Isn't he good at driving? Even if the chef is now in bed with his wife, I have to pull him out and let you eat and drink well. I understand. In this park, as long as you can make an order, you are the master. You can do whatever you want. If you can't make an order, even your grandson is inferior. Also, prepare a high bag for me at the entertainment venue, I'm going to have a blast today. Chapter 9. Past and Present Lives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What is paper drunkenness and gold obsession? This is it. I watched as the landlord opened his mouth in the cafeteria and ordered dishes that were not available domestically. Here's a baby fish. And just pair us with a few stir-fried dishes. A bottle of Moutai, please. The chef saw the spirited landlord and understood what was going on. He kindly instructed, don't leave any money. The days ahead are numbered. The landlord opened his mouth and cursed, do you understand anything? This is called, having wine today, getting drunk today. Do you understand Li Bai's poetry? After cursing the cook, I saw him turn around and spit at his side. I'm afraid this little landlord didn't even know he had offended anyone. How's it going, Lao Su? Is our literary cultivation impressive? I'm telling you, otherwise those women can make me stare for a moment. From Li Bai in China to the big stallion abroad, are we all familiar with each other? I am a person with little culture, but I also know the one abroad named Dumas. Breeding horses are bred on farms. The landlord had already grown taller before drinking, perhaps because he had been suppressing here for too long and finally found a way to relieve stress. Perhaps he couldn't find any other way to relieve stress except for this kind of release. Anyway, as soon as the wine was brought up, this kid unscrewed the bottle cap of Moutai and took a hard bite into his mouth. After finishing the drink, I remembered and asked, don't you mind if I bury you? Immediately after, without waiting for me to answer, the head of the household made the decision and said, would you like to drink or not? If you don't want me to be buried, just wait until after work and go back to 616 to eat big pancakes. He spoke and poured me a glass through the mouth of the bottle. I used to drink this kind of alcohol when I was in society, but I haven't tasted it since I came out of prison. I deliberately changed the topic and asked, how much does this table cost? The landlord raised his index finger and said, 10,000. According to the distribution ratio of the park, he only received over 30,000 yuan today. How could he just throw out 10,000 yuan? After hearing these words, I looked up and dried the wine in my glass, because if I didn't drink now, I wouldn't know if there was still any left. This is my buddy. I was still savoring the sauce aroma of Moutai in my mouth, and when the landlord saw me dry this glass of wine, his eyes kissed me a lot. The next second, the cold dishes were served, and the ordinary pickled cucumber tasted like dragon liver and phoenix marrow. After the sweet and sour pork ribs were brought up, the small landlord pulled the plate and ate peanuts in his mouth. This is really dull and bad in 616. When I look at the small landlord's eating behavior, it's not much different from seeking revenge on society. For this meal, the two of us ate 6 plates of vegetables and a baby fish clean, and drank a bottle of Moutai to the point where we kicked open the bottle and poured the last cup into our mouths. But next, the actions of the small landlord startled me. He picked up the Moutai bottle and threw it forcefully onto the ground. After the entire bottle was torn apart, he said in my surprised gaze, keep this bottle. There will be people selling fake liquor pouring other things into it. I can't let them deceive people like this. Isn't he just a scammer? I looked as if my whole body was electrified. It was really electrified, with goosebumps all over my body. I couldn't help but watch this kid say something reckless and didn't know how to refute it. Let's go. Next item. We both took the elevator from upstairs to the first floor. At the entrance of the first floor, Brother Yong was standing beside 2 green soldiers chatting with a cigarette in his mouth. When he saw the 2 of us coming down, he immediately smiled and said, "Are you guys drinking well?" At this moment, the landlord could still control his emotions and say, "Brother Yong, why didn't you go? It's pointless for us to drink thieves alone if you don't go." Brother Yong didn't harm him either. "Alright, why bother pretending to be with me? Let's go, Hai Bao has arranged everything for you." At this moment, the landlord was still being particular. "Are you our girl? Brother Yong, if you arrange for me to have 2 black and white people, then it's not particular. Don't worry. Brother Yong hugged both of us and walked out of building 2. This was the first time I had walked out of this building since I arrived at Myanmar. At that time, the feeling was that even the scorching sun in the sky was so warm, as if every free air was summoning me. But later, as long as my foot stepped on this land, I felt sick, purely physiological. I walked forward for about 400 to 500 meters, and almost every time I passed a building, I could hear the sounds of verbal abuse and the cries of others inside. When a nightclub sign with the words, "Past Life and Present Life," appeared in front of me, I couldn't believe that there was such a magnificent decoration in such a place where birds don't poop. The all-gold decoration appears magnificent, with 4 statues of pharaohs with sphinxes tightly attached to the floor. Yong-gu also explained, "Do you see these statues? They were all specially designed by the boss to block the window and prevent those women from running away. How particular are they? Pay attention to your mother, she stinks." I didn't curse. I dare not curse. Zhaosuiyuan.com. I have already cursed thousands of times in my heart, but I still caught that fool in my imagination and cursed in his ears and eyes. But in reality, I dare not. My mind is filled with images of the fleeing guy being chopped up and thrown into the pigsty on the day he arrived. So, I glanced at the pigsty next to me again. "Do you still think about what happened that day?" Yong-gu said to me at the door, "This is all because our boss learned from the drug lords in South America. In the past, this place was filled with drugs, so we only learned a little from the methods of the drug lords in South America. What they play with over there is high intelligence. After killing someone, they chop it up and throw it into the pigsty. They don't even need to deal with the body, and it can become digested pig manure the next day. It's not like those old fogies in other parks who bury people in the mountains when they have nothing to do." I looked at him with a chill in my eyes, and it was obvious that Brother Yong was very satisfied with the fear hidden in my gaze. "All right," he patted my shoulder and said, "You 2 guys go in and play, and I'll deliver it here. This is my first time walking here, and also my first time seeing true human nature." The landlord eagerly grabbed my arm and entered. When a beautiful waiter came to receive me, he immediately released me, picked me up, and nibbled on me. Until the woman let out a cry, 4 or 5 strong men from different races walked out of the corridor, each holding a machete and a stick. The landlord finally let go of his hand and said with a wry smile, "Misunderstandings, they are all misunderstandings." With a bow of his head, he entered the private room. I looked at the angry gaze of the group of people and received another message, which was the park I saw. Except for the park manager and green soldiers, it seemed that no one else was armed. Chapter 10. Riding Horses to Fight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The gameplay of High Bag is similar to that in China. Crazy music, unbearable dance moves, crazy people, and souls that can't even get into their bodies are constantly swaying. I saw with my own eyes that the small landlord took out a needle in the ice bucket and stuck it in his arm, and then said to a woman who was with him, "Get it for me, his mother." She really did that. It seems she doesn't take it seriously. The landlord's eyes were shining with a crazy thief light, and he turned to look at me. "Old Sue, this is called riding a horse to fight. Come, Bibi, see who will defeat the battle first." He didn't talk to me because I wasn't even sitting there. Of course, I didn't do anything good either, but I didn't puncture my arm with that needle. What was I doing back then? I am too suppressed, and I also need to release myself. "I'm fucking you." When the girl's scream came, the woman opened the door and rushed out. Then, a room full of people came in, just like those holding knives and sticks when we first entered. She pointed at the small landlord and shouted, "This bastard has peed." I was very nervous, thinking that it was the fault of the landlord that led to the inevitable fate, and my hand had already grasped the mouth of a bottle of Corona. "I don't want to die here." The small landlord sat on the sofa with great skill and remained silent. The Southeast Asian person who spoke Chinese turned around and asked the girl, "Did you give me money?" The landlord took out an employee card from his pocket and casually threw it on the table. The Southeast Asian picked up the employee card and handed it out. The woman was still explaining, "I'm talking to you, he's his mother. There is enough credit in the card." Pop. After slapping the woman in the face, the Southeast Asian man grabbed her hair without hesitation. "Listen up, if you disturb my guests again, I will send you to the ship on the open sea." I don't know what's scary about the ship on the open sea, but that girl quietly, little by little, has become what she used to be. The landlord looked at her and asked, "Keep shouting." He grabbed her hair, pressed it on the sofa and tore the other party's stockings. He shouted, "You his mother shout to me." I left at this time. When walking out of the room, 2 green soldiers held their hands high towards the door, and when they approached, they took out the cigarettes from their pockets and opened them, handing over 2. Those 2 green soldiers didn't know Chinese and chattered to me, but I didn't understand a word. The only reason they came out was to be afraid that the landlord might cause trouble and implicate me. The small landlord was picked up by Ada. He really had an accident. Not only did he mess with that girl, but he also opened 2 bottles of Corona on her head. The woman's body was dragged away by the green-skinned soldier. When the landlord walked out with his pants in hand, he had already passed the "hi" and said to me, "It's okay, I'm going to the medical room." Ada slapped the small landlord and said, 50,000. The landlord nodded and pulled me towards the distance, but without looking back, he said, "In terms of accounting, I will earn it back for you tomorrow when I go to work." He didn't go back to building 2, so Ada followed behind and entered a casino that looked nothing, filled with tables and beautiful lotus officials. Here, many zombies, like small landlords, stared at the gambling table with their eyes wide open, accompanied by the sound of, "The boss has made a fortune." They spent their time in disappointment or pride. The landlord also found a table and sat over. I lowered my voice and asked, "Gambling in this place, can you take the money with you if you win?" I was originally offering a friendly reminder, but the landlord answered with a question. "Where do you think you can take it? Where else do you think you can go?" He used his magnetic card to swipe out all the money, 10,000, 10,000, and then pushed it all towards Shuang. It is obvious that the money for the nightclub is also from Adiji. The beautiful lotus official casually said, "Boss, win more." She began to distribute cards one by one in the card box. Bet on red and blue. Just as I know, there are many big brothers in society who have a fortune of over 100 million here, but small landlords still want to play. However, he had good luck today, turning 20,000 into 40,000 in the first round. In the second round, 40,000 became 80,000. He has already won, and besides compensating that 50,000, there is still 30,000 left. As I sat on the side calculating the accounts for the landlord, I turned around and saw the woman outside the door with her head wrapped in white gauze and her hair completely shaved off, now bald. She glared fiercely at me as she passed by. In this second, I finally woke up. Is this money? No. This is the wound on the girl's head, the brutality of the landlord, and the lawless situation of the entire park. Am I still calculating? If it continues like this, one day it will turn into walking corpses like this group of people. Even if one finds their own soul, it is impossible to put back their former body. Shuang. Idle home wins. As soon as I woke up, I watched the small landlord give away all the money and open the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com. At that moment, our souls seemed to be completely punished by justice. Looking at the 8 o'clock of the small landlord's estate and the 234 card of the idle family, we couldn't move for a long time. 8 losses and 9 losses often occur. Okay. Ada advised, anyway, I ate and played today. It's not bad for this one. Today when we go back, you two will live in a king-sized room with air conditioning. Big brother will arrange it. I watched the small landlord walk back to building 2 in a daze, hugged by Ada. I believe everything he saw in front of him was blurry and distorted. This time, we went to the 4th floor, which was like a hotel. Inside the hotel, there was no channel when the TV was turned on, only various movies. Ada even asked specifically, "Do you two need to have another round? You can keep the account." The landlord remained silent and crawled into the bathroom. When Ada looked at me, I shook my head. I remember the sound of water flowing all night long that night, and the small landlord didn't come out of the toilet all night. He may be retaliating against the entire park by wasting water and electricity. And I, taking advantage of this time, searched through the entire room. Until a moment of turning around, I discovered a hidden camera stuck on the ceiling in the corner of the wall. Slowly, I tiptoed and became honest. Turns out my behavior was already under someone else's surveillance if the small landlords are still interested, then his mother will not be a live broadcast. It was a long time before I realized that this was also the way for the park to make money. They would take pictures of these things and post them on foreign websites. Although it was not as good as making money through fraud, they could still bear the cost of the entire park. Chapter 11. This lady can still cut. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The effect of alcohol made me sleep very soundly this night. In my dream, no one held a gun against me or said something I couldn't accept in front of me. But when the morning sun shone on my face, the new day left you with no intention of waking up at all. Old Sue, wake up and go to work. At this moment, the landlord walked out of the toilet. As I passed by the entrance of the toilet, there was a pungent smell of vomit and a floor full of toilet paper that made me dare not look directly. "Why did you make the toilet so bad?" Upon hearing this, the landlord immediately responded, "You don't need to tidy up." After finishing speaking, he asked in reverse, "Have you never received a needle, have you? Those who use too much will vomit, and many people will choke to death due to vomiting during high. Therefore, after getting an injection, they have to lie on their side to prevent choking to death." I don't want to get entangled with him on this issue. I think the landlord might as well die like this. Hey, weren't those places we went to yesterday all part of the park? Why do we still need money? The landlord explained, "In Myanmar, the military is the largest, and those green soldiers, also known as security guards, are responsible for execution. If one day you no longer have the motivation to deceive people, and those people from Ada are lazy, they will call you to the 8th floor. On the 8th floor, these green soldiers will hold electric batons and thrust you to death, then lock you in a small black room. When you completely collapse and obey like a dog, they will release you. 500 per person." "What 500? "The green soldiers will beat you up, and Ada and his team will give you 500. The landlord continued, "The nightclubs and casinos outside belong to the property management, and by the way, the property management is the military. That is to say, if you want to go out and enjoy yourself, you have to rely on improving your performance. Ada and his team never default, but they can never give you cash. When you have grades, they will specifically give you a magnetic card similar to ours, and then charge you money into the card. If you haven't achieved any results, then you're sorry." "Sorry, what? How can I say I'm sorry?" I grabbed the shoulder of the small landlord who was walking, pulled him back and faced me directly, asking with my gaze. The landlord explained, "Let me take you out for a blood test. On the kind of ship that went to the high seas as mentioned yesterday." The small landlord laughed and scolded. "You have a good his mother memory. On the ship going to the high seas, you need to get rid of corneas. It is also meant to match your blood test. But before you are completely exhausted, you will be sent to the blood cow bank to drain your last trace of value." Ga waste, remove cornea. When I heard these words, it seemed as if the act of chopping people on the street was no longer considered cruel. I remember when I first came in, Ada said, "If our family can compensate us, we can release the person immediately." Woo! The landlord immediately covered my mouth and said sternly, "Do you want to die?" Or do you want to drag down your family and die together? I looked at him without understanding. The landlord lowered his voice and explained, there is no such thing as releasing people in this place. No matter how much they call you, remember to death, never make a single phone call to your family. Finally, the landlord opened up to me, perhaps because my previous words touched him. When I first came to Southeast Asia, I was just as naive as you, thinking that my family would transfer money and not have to suffer. I started asking my family in the video to sell the house and collect enough compensation to call me. Do you know the result? The landlord looked at me and said seriously, my previous park was on the old street. After that, he turned around and left. The small landlord has been resold. That group of bastards did not release him as agreed, but instead sold him to Myanmar. After I can truly get along in Myanmar, I will understand what the truth behind it is. In the entire Southeast Asian Industrial Park, there are rules of your own. If you don't follow the rules, then the first person targeted by the military is you. They make you call your family, which is actually a means of fraud. In front of the camera, you will be mercilessly injured, such as punching, kicking, using wooden sticks and whips, and even worse, cutting your ears and nose in front of your family. But rest assured, this will definitely not delay you typing on the keyboard the next day. Moreover, such incidents usually occur after you are unable to continue generating benefits for the park. If your family's hearts are soft and they give money away, then the first money will be called your child's performance by them. After all, your child is still eating and drinking in the park without performance, which is not appropriate, right? They will still want a second sum of money. If the second sum of money can still be paid, it will become compensation, but it is nonsense compensation. For example, air breathing expenses, beauty viewing expenses, park tourism expenses, and unheard of survival expenses, which means that being able to live is a gift from them. If you want to save people, there is also a way, which is to report to the police through legitimate channels, inform Uncle Hat of the specific park, find Shuyuan www.chaoshuyuan.com, and then Uncle Hat will exert pressure on their military, and the other army will demand people from the park. That's it, you still have to bring money to the border port and hand over money and people to the military. If it weren't for this method, and I don't know which specific park the person I want to save is in, and how much money I need to call them will only tell these bastards that your family's money has not been fully drained by them. The small landlord must have been cleaned up by the old street park, so it was only after hearing me talk about the money that they became so excited. Of course, these are all my guesses. I thought I was smart enough to guess, but I still thought it was easy. I followed the small landlord to the elevator entrance and only then did I see the green soldier smoking in the safe passage. It turned out that someone had been guarding us all night. Entering the elevator, when the elevator door closed, the landlord said to me with great sincerity, "Brother, I advise you not to speak recklessly when you meet anyone except me, otherwise your fate will be very miserable." Before the elevator door opened, the landlord found the right time and added, "If you can run, just run." Ding! The elevator door opened and the landlord walked out first. I could tell that his last words to me were very true. After entering a room filled with computers, I saw a little couple who had been torn apart in life. The girl sat at the easternmost end, staring blankly at the computer screen, while the boy sat at the westernmost end, typing on the keyboard. The two of them had no communication and dared not even glance at each other. At this moment, the landlord had just opened his computer and boarded the Penguin. He saw the flashing icon in the bottom right corner of the computer screen, but he didn't even open the dialog box. He immediately stood up and shouted, "Where's Brother Yong? Brother Yong, I want to open a web page, and this woman can still cut it."